All right, as soon as we get live. Okay, we are live. Boy, I got a rowdy room this morning. There we go. So I'll call the meeting to order and I'll look for roll call for my clerk. Jennifer, whenever you're ready.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the April 29th Committee of the Whole meeting. I'm Jennifer Connor, Clerk of Ramara Township. I'll begin with roll call of council. Mayor Clark.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Bell.
Present.
Councillor Snutch.
Present.
Councillor Fisher. Present. Councillor Tuyu. Present. And Councillor Bell.
Present.
Thank you, Your Worship.
This meeting is being streamed live on the Township of Ramara YouTube channel. Be advised that by attending a public meeting of the Committee of the Whole of the Township of Ramara, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded, and they will form part of the recording. The chair, CAO, and/or clerk have the discretion and authority to terminate or interrupt the live streaming in exceptional circumstances where the content of debate is considered inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate behavior and/or comments.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a disclosure of pecuniary interest, any member of council? Not seeing any deputations and presentations. We have none, so we'll roll it right into environmental services with Councillor Tuyu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is one item on the agenda today, 4.1 Annual Wastewater Performance Reports, ID 2324. Recommendation that we receive staff report ID 2324 regarding the completion of the 2023 annual wastewater performance reports for the Lagoon City Wastewater Treatment Plant and the Bayshore Village Sewage Works as information. Can somebody please put this on the floor? Councillor Fisher and Deputy Mayor Bell. Thank you. Before opening it up for question and discussion, Diana, did you want to speak to the report before we get into that?
Good morning. Thank you, Councillor Tuyu. So the purpose of today's report is just to ensure that council is aware that the annual wastewater performance reports have been prepared as required. The facilities environmental compliance approval lists the requirements of the report. They've been prepared by Aqua, which is the township's operating authority, and they have been submitted to the Ministry of Environment as well. We are here today to answer any questions that you may have in regards to the reports. They are posted on the township's website and are available to the public if they should wish, so we can print them and have them available as well.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? I have questions if nobody's ready yet. Okay. So as always, I often wonder about what happens when you flush the toilet and where it goes. Regarding the portion about Lagoon City sewage, the report states that a total volume of 1,035 cubic meters of biosolids was hauled off-site for land application. The biosolids met all compliance criteria listed in the Ontario Guidelines for Sewage Biosolids Utilization on Agricultural Lands. My question is, are sewage biosolids normally applied to agricultural lands? Really? Okay. All right. My next question, for the Bayshore Village sewage, the inspection report states that there are 4 items of non-compliance. Have all of the recommendations been implemented to bring us back into compliance?
So this is a question that I will pass on to our operating authority as it's I guess under their agenda to look after ministry inspections and compliance. So Nick LaRue is the senior operations manager.
There you are, Nick. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. 3 of the items have been addressed and are now in compliance. The remaining item is related to the drainage pipe in the north field, and it is to be excavated this afternoon, weather permitting, for inspection.
Thank you. And I guess regarding that one there, how did it come to be that the pipes in the spray fields had been modified and had holes in them, et cetera? Is that the portion you're talking about?
It's nearby. Those were vent holes for drainage of the one section of pipe.
Okay. My last question is, The report states that there were community complaints received throughout the reporting period with regard to noncompliance with the ECA pipe leaks in the fields and effluent pooling. What are we doing to address complaints from the residents who do not even benefit from having access to municipal wastewater services?
So depending on the nature of the complaint, we would, if it was something for like a pipe break that's noted by a passerby or a resident nearby, we would immediately go and shut the fields off to repair the pipe. If it was related to evidence of ponding or something like that, again, we would inspect the fields and shut the or the plant down if required as well. And then we also note all of them to report in the annual report.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? Mayor Clark, go
Just,
ahead.
I think we all received the email. In fact, I know all of council got it from some residents. When you look at our studies, it says 26 hectares, but when you go on the satellite image and pin the corners of the field, we're actually only spreading on 19 hectares. Do we have a comment on that? And can we please correct that?
The amount that's noted in the annual report has just been the number that was always used. It is something that we can measure and address, though, if it is not reflecting the actual size.
I think it's something we'll need to do. I don't know if we need a motion for that, but again, that's the advantage of, Google Earth now and satellites. You can actually pin in on property from overhead and get accurate acres, whereas back in the old days, you're kind of paced.
And it's not a small difference.
No, but it's a noticeable difference in the amount of effluent that we're applying, right?
Yeah, the site has an exemption from the application rate, or has for the previous number of years as well. So it affects the calculations end result, but it doesn't affect the compliance of the site.
Thank you. Any Councillor
But
Fisher?
I guess we would need a report on that to see exactly how much it is. Then we know exactly what the flow rate is that we're applying, correct?
Certain.
And I know MCP would like that as well, at least know. Again, we have the exemptions, as long as we can get it out, but we need to know for council what our application rate is.
So is this the time when we would request a report on that? Okay.
Good.
Councillor Snitch?
Yeah, sorry, but the compliance that we have may not have been issued if the correct number of hectares were used, correct? Reported? You're saying it's not going to make a difference? Because
So we have an exemption for the application rate of 55 cubic meters per hectare.
right,
Have in the past.
and that's been calculated because of,
That's kind of a gray area that's been discussed with the MECP. It seems to be kind of a generic number that was used. It's an annual average as well. So one day you could far exceed it and the next day you could be well under it. It's just averaged over the annual season.
but it's based on the number of hectares that we have in the spray fields.
It's
correct?
based on a rate you can apply per hectare, not the number of
Right.
hectares.
So if the fields are a smaller size, it's going to reduce.
It would increase your rate per hectare, yes, when you calculate it.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Fisher.
So therefore, in turn, making us in non-compliance immediately,
Well, there was an
right? Like
exemption from
I
it.
understand that there's provisions for like extended or extra application. And I understand that it's 55 cubic meters per hectare. So therefore we can apply whatever that math equals. But if we only have this much land, then immediately every single day we are in non-compliance because we're not using that one field. As well as it also not fitting geographically the numbers that have been used to calculate all this time. We now have a reduction of almost 20, 26, 30% of hectares that we've been using for math, not applying it to that at a rate that we're using wrong numbers for. So that tells me on day one, we are in non-compliance.
Well, again, it's an annual average. So there are some days we may apply 80 to 90 cubic meters per hectare on like a hot summer day. And then there's days where you might only apply 15 cubic meters per hectare.
But I thought that was addressed last term of council where we tried to figure out that in a season, this is how much we can spray in a season. And we felt that we were within, which is why we weren't necessarily always taking the extensions as long as we felt needed, because it averaged out to be about this much a day, when in fact, we didn't have 100 spray days. We only had 35 or 40 spray days, but we were tripling up, which is why it was identified and noted back then with Tatham saying, no, you can't do it this way. It has to be done this way instead.
I can't speak to that. I'm not sure which meeting you're speaking of.
Well, we've just, by the math, by the size of the property, it just, we're overspraying on day one.
You exceed the 55, yes. The site hasn't met the 55 cubic meters per hectares in the better part of 10 years now.
Right.
But again, it's an annual average. So even if you, for argument's sake, sprayed, say the limit was 1,000 that you could spray per day, even if you sprayed 2,000 on that day, you're not out of compliance. It's just an annual average. So if it averages out to the 55 over the course of a year, you would be in compliance.
But not, okay.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
I understand what Nick's saying is we've never actually maxed out. Using the formula, we've never maxed out in an annual year. We've actually never reached it because we've never had enough spray days to meet that, right?
You exceed the 55 cubic meters per average, yes,
For
for the year as well.
but for the year as well. Did we
Yeah.
go over the maximum formula that we've put in place?
Yes, it's
Okay.
been out of compliance for 7 or 8 years.
By how much?
It varies. Last year was close. In previous years, I believe it got as high as 20 or 30 cubic meters per day over. Quite significantly over.
I must be missing something here. If the acreage that we're supposed to spread over is actually smaller than what we're reporting, wouldn't that automatically mean that we shouldn't be putting that much out there? I guess the first thing we have to do is confirm the acreage. But what I'm hearing from you is that even if the acreage is wrong, it's not going to matter. And that's what I'm not getting.
The past few years, it wouldn't have because there was an exemption from the 55 per hectare. Previously, the site was in non-compliance back to 2017, roughly. Every year, it was exceeding that 55 cubic meters per hectare over the course of the season. So say the math worked out to 60 cubic meters per hectare over the course of those years. If the numbers are in fact incorrect and there is less hectares, that might change the calculation to work out to 65 instead of 60. Either way, both would be in non-compliance.
But I thought the number would go down, not up.
If you make the amount of hectares you're spraying on less, but your volume stays the same, it works out to a higher per hectare rate.
That you're saying they would automatically grant that higher rate, or would it be restricted because you have less acreage?
The rate wouldn't change. The rate is in the C of A. So that's just what the average is supposed to be. Your calculated application rate based on how much you sprayed over the year on how many hectares would change.
Okay. Well, it's probably no point until we confirm the acreage or the hectare to see if there's anything else that's going to be affected, but
I agree.
So do you want me to tag my motion to I'm looking at the clerk, to the report, or do you want a separate motion on getting clarification on the acreage? Hectarage or whatever. So I will move that we get clarification on the.
Okay. That's second by Councillor Fisher. All in favor? It's carried. Were there any other questions? Councillor Fisher, I saw you with your hand up earlier. Did you have or was it answered in that last exchange? Okay, all right. Does anybody else have any other questions or discussion on this? No? Okay, well, I guess let's vote that we receive report ID 2324 regarding the completion of the 2023 annual wastewater performance reports for the Lagoon City Wastewater Treatment Plant and the Bay Shore Village Sewage Works as information. All in favor? That's passed. Is there any unfinished or new business? Go ahead, Mr.
Just a quick one on the biosolids. Yeah, it does go on agriculture land, but you do have to have a permit. Correct me on that, Nick. They have to get the ministry.
They have to
You
have
did
an
get a
approved
permit on
mass
that
place.
land. It shows up, I believe, on your title now too, does it not? On the deed somewhere that you put biosolids on?
That I'm not sure.
Yeah, but no, the land has to be licensed for it.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up for me. I didn't know. Any other unfinished or new business? Okay, that's it. Back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you to Aqua for coming in to answer some of our questions. And we'll move on to administration and finance. Councillor Snutch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have one item on the agenda today. It's item 5.1, Cycle Science Organics Program. It's AD 0824. Recommendation that council receive report AD 0224 as information and that we forward it to the 2025 budget deliberations for considerations. Can I have someone put that on the floor, please? Councillor Fisher, thank you. Councillor Tuyu, thank you. Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
I could support if it's like an addition, not included in the budget, but it's there on budget day to discuss it. That'll give us time to see what kind of public feedback we get on this, because again, it is a county issue that we're wading into, but hey, if we can help the environment, I don't have a problem with that. But so I would just like it to appear as one of those options, kind of that we have a choice to put in or out at budget time.
My only comment would be if, that's a year away or 8 months away. Should we be trying to do some type of test before we get there, maybe with one building or something? Because I don't think this has got a rural application to it. I see how it can be used in Lagoon City and places like that, but I just don't see it overall. But if we could test it for a building in Lagoon City and see what's there, if we don't get the results, then maybe we don't have to put it in the budget. That's my only question, but I open both ways.
Yes, we could test it in Lagoon City. We still don't have a budget for it. So we'd have to come up with some funding to.
Well, I might even say suggested in one building. I mean, a very small amount.
Okay, so yeah, we could look at something like that, and we could do an application type process for that. When talking to Simcoe County, their recommendation was to do it in buildings that don't have access to green bins, such as condo buildings, apartment buildings. And the only caveat they mentioned is they might not have anywhere to dump those bins if they don't have, a common area, common garden. So they'd be storing up all this compost and nowhere to put it. Yeah, so that was one thing the County of Simcoe kind of warned me about when I discussed it with them, but they were on board as long as it was to places that didn't have access to a county green bin.
Sorry, Councillor Bell.
Thank you. Sorry. I thought that the intent of the report is actually a test, because unless I misread it, it's talking about a test of 100 units or residences first. So my understanding was that that's what this would be, would just be a test for 100 units. And then if it works, we would look at it again in 26. And maybe I misunderstood the intent of the report.
Well, I just think I think you could do a test with a smaller group than 100, is what I'm sort of saying. And if you find out that it's not being used or anything, then we don't even have to continue with the next step. But that's, as I say, I'm open either way. Councillor Bell.
Yeah, sorry, I still had one more question. I got the impression as well from the report that county was sort of, I saw half support, but not full support. So it was sort of saying, we know that we don't offer enough of a rebate for the organics in the condos at Lagoon City, for example, but that at the same time, it wasn't offering any kind of rebate. So I just want to be clear that is that the intent, Mayor Clark, from county?
Actually, we do offer a rebate equal to what their taxes would be for garbage removal. That's what the rebate was designed. That's why it hasn't gone up. We have a contract. The rebate is the garbage portion of their taxes being removed. So you're not actually paying for the service. So, county, again, especially now with the organics being handed or not the organics, the recycling being handed to the province, we're still not going into the condominiums or anywhere like that.
But the condos don't receive any other kind of waste removal service either, right? So they're not, you can't put your Christmas tree out, for example. There's no removal of that sort of thing, to my understanding. There's no removal of any organics. They can't participate in things like the textile or the battery collection, that kind of thing. So the rebate they're getting is very basic and relates to actual bagged garbage, if you will, but doesn't offer a rebate on anything else. So they aren't actually receiving a fair rebate. So the idea of this would have been to assist in that way. So, and I know we're going to discuss this later, but I just want to make sure that for the residents who are listening, they understand what county's intent is. So in a nutshell, county's intent is not to offer any kind of subsidy for this program. It's status quo. You get what you get for garbage, and that's all where this organic program might be concerned.
Mr. Mayor.
I'll clarify it again. The rebate is equal to all garbage removal, organics, recycling, everything is included in the garbage portion of our tax bill. And the rebate is the rebate to the folks that don't have it, don't pay for the garbage removal. It's all inclusive. It's removed from their taxes. It's a
Okay,
service you don't pay for. It's a service they don't have.
But it doesn't come anywhere close to the rebate they receive does not come close to the cost of waste removal.
The rebate is equal to what we're billing everybody else for garbage. So you don't pay for garbage and you don't have the service.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Fisher.
I'm just reading between the lines, and I think I understand what the report's trying to say. The motion is include $5,000 in 2025 for this program. And then further down, it says suggested that township start with 100 households. So the $5,000 would cover the 100 households. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Any other questions? All right, so we're stuck with the original motion then. All in favor of the original motion? Passed. Any new or unfinished business? I see none, so back to the mayor.
Thank you. Next I have Culture and Recreation, Deputy Mayor Bell.
Great. We have no items on the agenda today. Is there any unfinished or new business? All right, I'm not seeing any. Back to you, Mayor.
Thank you. I have Planning and Development Services, Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor. There are 3 items on the agenda. First item is 7.1, Richwood Place as proposed name, road name, consent file B19, B20, B21, and B22 and 23 at 6199 Concession Road, BC. The recommendation is that council receives the staff report BP 0924 published on April 29th, 2024, Committee of the Whole agenda, and that council approves in principle the naming of a proposed road subject to consent files B19, B20, B21, and B22/23 Richwood Place. Can I have somebody put that on the floor, please? Deputy Mayor and Councillor to you. Any discussion or questions? Okay, all right. So the recommendation I just read, all in favor? And that is carried. Second item, item 7.2 is Bill 185 and the new draft provincial planning statement 2024. The recommendation is that council receive report BP 1524 dated April 29th, 2024 regarding Bill 185 and the draft provincial planning statement 2024 as information, and that the Director of Building and Planning or their designate be delegated authority to submit comments on Environmental Registry of Ontario postings related to the Planning Act and planning policy on behalf of the township. Can I please have somebody put that on the floor? Deputy Mayor and Councillor Bell. Is there any questions or discussions? Councillor Chiu.
I have 2 questions. I don't like that this very narrow window to submit comments does not allow for us to approve it before the deadline. Is this request just for these ERO notices closing on May 10th or for all ERO notices going forward?
This would be we're asking for all EROs moving forward, but we're speaking today specifically about this one, so we can get our comments in time. Sometimes the commenting period doesn't allow us the time to bring it, discuss it, and take it back. So we just want to have the flexibility where we do have the time. We propose to bring it like we are bringing it now as information and discuss. But if the time runs out, we still want to have our voices heard.
Thank you. Yeah, it's only a 30-day window, so that's awkward timing for us. My second question is to help me feel better about voting on this, and based on the creation of the NAP zoning and the proposed Muley Point subdivision to protect wetlands, I am confident in our staff to prioritize this sort of thing. But what would be the types of comments that staff would submit? Because if it is a general awesome. We're looking to grow as fast as possible and cut all that pesky red tape. I don't think the province needs that kind of feedback to go ahead with this. My hope is that the comments are being submitted from the viewpoint of promoting responsible and sustainable growth and the importance of wetland preservation and water protection.
The objective of our planning department, and I believe it's in line with council and the feedback we hear from residents, is to ensure responsible, sustainable development. And that includes economic viability, minimum use of natural resources such as land, and minimal destruction to any environmental feature.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Mayor?
Yeah, I see. I am actually glad to see finally they're repealing some of the old, this was our trouble before. Every time they come out with a new planning policy, they didn't repeal the old one and they just kept layering them on, where typically you rescind all the old bylaws and you create a new document. So finally we're doing it properly. So the natural heritage mapping is remaining, because I've heard on and off on that. However, they're changing the definition. Is that I'm reading that correctly?
They're changing some of the wording behind the natural area, but it's still county led up until this point, but it looks like county will be losing some of this authority by the end of this year.
So they're looking at more of a Greenlands designation that we had before than what the natural heritage was, I would assume, because we had a pretty good Greenlands policy before.
I'm actually not 100% sure about that. Is Jennifer on?
Hi,
Thanks,
yes,
Jen.
She was involved with this a little more.
yes. So it would follow the county's Greenlands policies. Right now, the county's Greenlands is considered the natural heritage system of the township. So it would continue to go that way.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, so Bill 185 and the new draft provincial planning statement 2024, that we received this report and that the Director of Building and Planning or their designate be delegate authority to submit comments on Environmental Registry of Ontario postings related to the Planning Act and planning policy on behalf of the township. All in favor? That is carried. And the third item on the agenda, got to scroll for one hot minute, is the Ramara Road Servicing Open House. There's no motion on the agenda, so I'm guessing it's so that we can plan a date.
Yeah, this was a discussion item that came from Councillor to you at the last council meeting to bring forward to the next COW. So we added to the agenda for discussion.
Okay, so we're having a discussion on what's happening, or we're having a discussion on
if
Tuesday.
council wishes to have a open house for the
Okay,
purchase of the property for the municipal sewer, water and sewer system on Fern Resort Road.
I would like that.
Mayor?
I would suggest late June. Is that doable? Is that?
So I guess I'll speak to this a little bit. So the reason we purchased property and we brought it to council was it's part of our master servicing plan to have municipal water and sewer services rather than private water and sewer services in the area. So to get ahead of it, we have been working with developers to take the land, and eventually there will be water and sewer services on that property. There is no requirement to have a open house or a public meeting. So we do try to stay away from those when they're not legislated. Of course, we're happy to do a open house. One thing I could suggest is we do have our official plan open houses coming up. And I was wondering if we could do that maybe at the same time. And if people did have questions, I would be there and staff would be there to answer those. So I don't have the dates, but it will lead, I don't know if he's got any specific dates yet, but.
We don't have specific dates yet, but we're looking in June.
Sorry, I'm just taking notes. In June, Councillor Snatch.
To the CAO, did you just say purchase land? I thought we were given the land.
Sorry, yes, we were given the land.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So. Mayor?
Then why don't we just put a report on when we're doing our official plan public open houses, then we could have it at the same time, just kind of a sidebar, and this is the Ram Road servicing. This is why we're going to one central location, because the last that the people saw, and we're going back 20 years now. Yeah, it was like 4 or 5 different plants, and we've all amalgamated that now into one. So you want to explain to folks that that's actually a win.
Can I just clarify one thing? When we have our public process for our OP consultations and different things, is it via open house or is it via public meeting? I just want to make sure that we are within the definitions of.
Yes, so it's both. Public meetings, it's it's legislated when to have public meetings, and this is why we try to have public meetings in adherence with the statutes and laws, whether it be the Building Code Act, Planning Act, Development Charges Act. We have the specific public meetings. Going above and beyond and having additional public meetings can be problematic because it's not required. Why are you putting somebody through a process that's not required? But open houses are a way to communicate information to the public, receive information to public, put that information as a part of the document, that then we have the public meeting, hoping that we've got everything. And if anything else comes up new, it could be done in the public meeting and then brought to council as a revision to the original comment. But open houses are a good tool to get two-way dialogue in a less formal environment to get the information.
Excellent.
put
So
into the
this June
So this
day is an open.
So in
house.
June, we'll be doing open houses because we did
Excellent.
open houses last year for the OP. We did 3 of them. We'll be doing maybe 1 or 2 again this year because the legislation changed quite a bit and our document has evolved due to the public comments that we got from everyone. So we're going to have another open house and then we'll bring it to public meeting one more time.
Okay. So barring any further comment, what I'm hearing is it's being recommended by staff that we attach this open house to the June open house for the OP, but I can't put a motion on the floor. So if somebody would like to do something like that. So that's moved by sorry, Deputy Mayor Val, and it's seconded by Dana, or Councillor to you, and I need coffee. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay. Is there any new or unfinished business? Seeing none, back to you, Mayor.
Thank you. Next, I have Protective Services, Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mayor. There are no items on the agenda today. Is there any unfinished or new business? I'm seeing none, and I'll pass the chair back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Transportation Services, Deputy Mayor.
There's nothing on the agenda this week. Any unfinished or new business? Not seeing any. I'll pass back to you, Mayor.
So we have no closed session, so I'll look for a motion to adjourn. How about Councillor Bell and second by Councillor Fisher? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everybody.